To push your tour into a better context, I will briefly review the political history of the Korean Peninsula. Prior to World War II, the Japanese had colonized the Korean Peninsula. In the final days of World War II, the Soviet Union accepted the Japanese surrender north of the 38th parallel, while the United States accepted the Japanese surrender to the south. The 38th parallel was never meant to be a political boundary nor a division of the country. It merely designated areas of responsibility. So, in the May of 1948, elections were held in the South. This meant Dr. Syngman Rhee became the first president of the Republic of Korea. In September of the same year, the Soviet Union appointed Kim Il-sung as the first communist premier of North Korea. He reigned for approximately 46 years until his death in July of 1994. His eldest son, Kim Jong-il, succeeded him in power. This was the first ever father-to-son succession of power to ever take place in a communist country. He reigned for approximately 17 years until his death in December of 2011. Kim Jong-il's youngest son, Kim Jong-un, succeeded him in power. This marks the third generation of the family's rule over North Korea. Despite negotiations and attempts to reunify the Korean Peninsula, on June 25, 1950, North Korea launched a massive surprise attack. This ensuing war lasted over 3 years and cost over 2 million people their lives. Forces stopped the North Korean Army's advance near the city of Busan. Over the next 4 months, the United Nations Command launched the Incheon landing, which pushed back the North Korean forces back to the Yalu River, the border between North Korea and China, at which point the Chinese army entered the war and aided the North Koreans in their war effort. The war stabilized around 38 parallel. Although a permanent settlement had not been reached, on July 27, 1953, the military commanders of the United Nations Command, the Korean People Army, and the Chinese People Volunteers signed a ceasefire agreement or an armistice agreement to end the fighting. This agreement is still in effect to this day. The MDL between North and South Korea has remained relatively the same ever since then. All military commanders were ordered to pull back their troops 2,000 meters from the last point of hostile contact, thus creating a 4-kilometer wide, 241-kilometer long demilitarized zone, or DMZ. Note the relationship to Seoul in relationship to the MDL. We are at Camp Boniface. We are currently located 400 meters from the southern boundary of the DMZ and 2.4 kilometers from the MDL. This is the city of Kaesong. It was the site of the armistice talks prior to being moved to Panmunjom, or we call the Joint Security Area. Although the DMZ is one of the most militarized locations in the world, the MDL itself consists of no fortifications. It's simply a series of 1,292 yellow and black panel markers that runs from coast to coast in 100-200 meter intervals. On the southern side, they are labeled Korean on top and English on the bottom, while on the northern side, they're labeled Korean on top and Chinese on the bottom. Within the Joint Security Area, the MDL is more clearly defined by a series of white stakes that stand approximately 1 meter in height and spaced in 10-meter intervals. They further extend onto Conference Row by a 17 by 5-inch slab of concrete between the buildings. On our trip north today, this is the area we'll be visiting. Notice how the MDL winds its way through the middle of the DMZ and forms a finger within the Joint Security Area. Upon arriving here, we'll be surrounding all 3 sides by Communist North Korea. We'll start our tour here at Camp Boniface and exit onto the MSR, or the main supply route. This was also known as Old Highway 1. For over 50 years, this has been the only stretch of highway that connected North and South Korea until the agreement was made to open the East and West Transportation Corridor. This is the only route that leads to the JSA for all armistice-related events. While traveling north, we will point out Guard Post 240, Observation Post Olet, the village of Taesonggang, or Freedom Village, the village of Gijeonggang, or Propaganda Village, the Swiss and Swedish Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission camp, and the former Czech and Polish Neutral Nations camp. I will highlight more. In 1981, the Republic of Korea donated a flagpole to the village of Taesongdong that stood taller than the original flagpole in Gyeongdong. So the North Koreans quickly responded by building an even taller flagpole. Today, the flagpole in Taesongdong stands approximately 100 meters in height, while the flagpole in Gyeongdong stands over 160 meters in height. As we enter the Joint Security Area, we will point out the Neutral Nations Supervisory Commission, or the NNSC camp. Delegates from Switzerland, Sweden, Czechoslovakia, and Poland originally formed the NNSC. This commission was charged with the investigation of all armistice violations occurring outside the DMZ. There are currently 3 delegates that work. Swiss and Swedish who stay all year long, and the Polish who come for biannual meetings. From checkpoint 3, you will be able to see the former Czech and Polish Neutral Nation camp as seen here on the right. And on the left is the Korean People's Peace Museum. This museum was constructed in less than 48 hours solely for the signing of the armistice agreement. Visible for checkpoint 3 is also the Bridge of No Return. It obtained its name near the end of the Korean War when Operation Big Switch and Little Switch were conducted. The United Nations Command returned over 82,000 prisoners of war, where North Korea and China returned approximately 13,000 prisoners of war. Prisoners were lined up at either side of the bridge and given opportunity to cross into the country of their choice. However, once they crossed, they could never return, hence the name. The Bridge of No Return lies on the southern boundary and the edge of the JSA. All the blue buildings belong to the United Nations Command of the UNC, while all the red buildings belong to North Korea or the KPA. Prior to 1976, the Joint Security Area was known as a neutral location, and guard forces from both sides could freely cross the MDL. North Korea took advantage of this by building 4 communist guard posts on the southern edge of the JSA, while the UNC did not build any in the north. Notice how checkpoint 4 is surrounded on all 3 sides by communist guard posts and isolated from the rest of the JSA. Soldiers working at checkpoint 3 had a limited visibility of checkpoint 4 due to extremely large poplar tree that grew in this area. So, on August 18, 1976, the UNC dispatched a 5-man civilian work detail accompanied by a 12-man security force for a routine tree trimming operation to improve the visibility between the 2 checkpoints. Upon arriving, they were met by 28 North Korean guards. Work began as scheduled, however, after 15 minutes, North Korean guards attacked. The ensuing fight lasted only 4 minutes, but in that time, JSA Captain, Company Commander Captain Arthur Boniface, and First Platoon Leader, First Lieutenant Mark Barrett, were brutally axed to death. To give you a better idea how outnumbered they were that day, I will point out 3 JSA soldiers visible in this photograph. The first here is rather hard to see, but he's here fighting off 7 North Korean guards. Here lies the helmet of Captain Arthur Boniface, and here you can clearly see a North Korean wielding an axe at a JSA soldier. Due to the unprovoked act of violence, a special series of meetings were held. It was decided an actual MDL would separate the 2 guard forces. Under these new arrangements, there were no more active violence until November 23, 1984, when a Soviet citizen on a North Korean-sponsored tour dashed across the MDL and attempted to defect to the free world. He was followed by North Koreans armed with pistols and rifles in an attempt to kill or stop him. There were approximately 30 North Koreans in the northern portion of the sunken garden. The JSA Quick Reaction Force was immediately alert and able to halt and outflank the North Korean main body. The ensuing firefight lasted only 20 minutes. However, in that time frame, the KPA had 3 soldiers killed and 5 wounded, while the UNC had 1 man, Corporal Jan, killed and 1 wounded. The Soviet defector was evacuated to Camp Boniface. On our trip north today, you will see KPA soldiers. The red armband indicates they are military police. Under the armistice, all armed personnel within the DMZ must wear these armbands, but the KPA no longer do so. While on tour, they may come down to see us. We actually do not communicate with them in any manner, verbally or non-verbally. We do provide assistance and security for humanitarian operations, such as repatriation of remains from the Korean War and delivery of humanitarian aid to the North. We also provide security and assistance to visiting dignitaries and heads of state, such as the former President of the United States, George W. Bush, the President of the Republic of Korea, Lee Min-pak, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, John Key, and the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and the former Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, all seen here on tour in Panmunjom. Just like these dignitaries, you will be guarded by the soldiers of this battalion. The soldier on the right is a United States Army infantry soldier. We served 12 months here. The soldier on the left is a Republic of Korea ROK soldier. They served 24 months here. Both soldiers must have above average aptitude of normal soldiers and possess a clean civilian and military record.